hoping that you find this conversation and this topic very interesting. I have always been fascinated by reverse mentoring as one element in which we can continue to challenge and disrupt kind of the dynamics around us. Reverse mentoring in general is not a new concept. It's been around since about 1995 when J.P. Morgan Chase decided to leverage this concept called reverse mentoring. And then later in 1999, we had Jack Welch at GE take this. In that time period, reverse mentoring was really more about helping older workers in the workplace learn from the younger employees how to use technology, how to use computers, not even laptops, just using computers in general. Over time and how we've started to take it and evolve this concept around reverse mentoring is we took it into companies like Cisco and Hewlett-Packard and added an additional element, and that was around diversity, diversity of gender, diversity of nationality, GLBTQ, other more representative dynamics around diversity that most of us are familiar with. Where we're now pushing reverse mentoring, where we're now taking it, is this concept around diversity of thought, and really using reverse mentoring to start to consider it as a tool to create a place of belonging, something that's very essential and necessary for our employees as we think about this concept around belonging. Today, there's so much we can talk about with reverse mentoring, but I want to focus on three big elements as it relates to this topic. Our strategic goals around a reverse mentoring program, kind of the program overview, what is it, how does it work, what are some of those best practices, and what's the true value behind a program such as this. So let's talk about the strategic aspect around reverse mentoring. Essentially, whether you are still wanting to apply it based on, a senior leader that is reverse mentored by a more junior individual in the company, or you want to take it all the way to today's concept around diversity of thought and this concept of creating belonging in the workplace or just around you with the individuals that you're working with. The fact is that we can start to leverage this as a way to develop transformational leaders, those leaders that start to challenge legacy thinking, asking those hard questions. Why do we do things this way? Is it time to start changing? What is your perspective on why and how certain things are happening? It is definitely a way to invest in our culture of uniqueness, inclusion, and belonging. And it really is an opportunity to enlighten self and others through mutual understanding. Not only have I had the opportunity of implementing a reverse mentoring program and working with others to do the same, not just in the United States, but across Europe as well, I have had the opportunity of actually being a reverse mentor. So I mentored a senior leader who was initially part of, he was a leadership for a certain part of the function of a company, Cisco in particular. And as they moved up through the ranks, this individual kept me as a reverse mentor. And it was very enlightening to see some of these situations in which having this conversation, not only was he learning in the process, I was learning as well. There were situations where he would share with me this concept of, we would come into a meeting and start to determine who are the best people for succession planning. And based on some of the conversations that he and I were having, he would ask some of the tough questions to some of the other leaders in the room and start to understand that the individuals that we were focusing on for opportunities may not always be the right individuals. They were louder, they showed up, they showed that they were solving problems, but when you thought about it and worked the back end of it, we started to realize that some of those individuals were the same ones. Had they done some preliminary steps up front, those issues that they were solving would have never happened. That some of the more quiet leaders were probably some of the most powerful leaders that should be pushed to the forefront, but they were so quiet we would overlook them. So there are so many different examples in which we start to see this concept of transformational leaders asking the right questions and how this all comes together. So how do you do something like this? If you're going into this concept of reverse mentoring, what is it? It is definitely an engagement that shifts your paradigm. It gets you to think about things from a whole new perspective. It helps you to consider the world around you, as I say, through a new lens. It's similar to what I say, you know, when you have not experienced something in life, even though it's around you, you don't even notice it. For me personally, I think about the fact that before I had children, I actually never noticed when women were pregnant around me. Then all of a sudden I was pregnant and it seemed like the whole world was pregnant around me. But the fact is, that was not what was happening. I was now living this experience of having a baby. And so when we are able to open ourselves up and we're able to share through a reverse mentoring experience, we're essentially allowing the other person to walk in our shoes. We're able to disrupt social and cultural norms that sometimes keep people from seeing exactly what's happening around them. What I love most is that it's a penalty-free discussion. You can ask those hard questions. You can ask those questions that maybe in public somebody might look at you and say, why are you asking that? Or you might feel like, that's kind of a dumb question. I don't know if I want to ask that. This is a very safe, trusting environment where you have an opportunity to practice vulnerability, to open yourself up and question yourself, question norms, question habits, question different types of thinking. And this is really, as you think about early on where reverse mentoring started, and it was about a younger employee teaching an older employee how to use a computer, it has now evolved to helping individuals understand each other, to come together and create a space of belonging and diversity of thought to say, I never considered that. That's a great idea. The ultimate goal of this program is to create what I call a brave space, to discuss those real world topics. I think many people have heard creating a safe space. Safe space for me means I'm comfortable, but I don't have a voice. I don't have an opportunity to express myself. I want to take it to that place of having a brave space, and that's what this program allows me to do. I feel safe. I'm creating this place where I feel vulnerable, but I feel safe enough to open up and be brave enough to ask those questions and not feel that the other person's going to criticize me. You develop open and trusting relationships, and you foster mutual understanding. The mistake that many people make when they go into a reverse mentoring program, they feel it's a one-sided road. If they feel that only one individual in this engagement will learn. It's also very challenging because the person who is in the mentee role typically has the experience of being in the mentor role. So you have to switch it. You have to make sure that each one understands that the person who is a mentor is not normally the person that you're used to being the mentor. And that alone is a learning opportunity for them. And they now have to embrace the fact that they do, in fact, have something to teach the mentee. And through that mutual understanding, there is growth in understanding from both sides. And when you are vulnerable and you open yourself up, you have this opportunity to develop a very trusting relationship. So for me, the concept is discuss, open, have those conversations, enhance your thinking, enhance your problem-solving skills, enhance yourself as an individual, and learn through that opportunity. It's an opportunity for develop very unique and different than what we are normally used to. The way the program is designed, it's typically a 6-month program. What I have found and the experience I have found is that people will run through their 6-month program, and there is always a handful of individuals who will continue with their mentoring program. They will continue with that relationship. My example, as I mentioned, we were actually in a 3-month mentoring relationship with the individual that I was mentoring, and that relationship lasted about 7 years. So a very long time, and it was a very dynamic relationship back and forth, both the learning and the opportunity to teach as well. But typically this program, a managed program, is about 6 months, and a mentee is partnered with a diverse mentor. So if you are bringing individuals from 2 different industries or 2 different parts of the business or 2 different perspectives in life, or if you want to go back to the age or the diversity, you bring these individuals together with the understanding that there is a uniqueness that each one of them brings to the table, that these are not individuals who normally would come together. These are not individuals who normally would have a conversation with each other. And that's what creates the dynamics, and it's what creates what I call managed conflict, because they are not individuals who normally would come together. The relationship entails having individuals come together 1 hour per month. The beauty of this is they do not physically have to come together. They do not have to be in one place. They can do it as we're doing now through a Zoom session or something of the sort. One thing that I found that I would say be very cautious of is that sometimes the mentee, because they are used to being the mentor or don't really understand the dynamics of this, tend to have these conversations while they're in the car or they're doing something else or they are trying to multitask. And one of the things I say is it's 1 hour a month. Dedicate yourself 100% to this conversation. It will pay off. There is some training and orientation that goes into it. Every mentee gets a 30-minute one-on-one conversation so they understand the uniqueness that they will bring to the table and the uniqueness that hopefully they will benefit from as they engage with their mentor. The mentors have a 1 hour training where they come together, and they come together to share those monthly best practices. As a mentor, they have a real challenge to push the envelope, as we say, to really help people to understand and to challenge themselves so that they really start to think about conversations, topics that normally would not come up in conversation. That responsibility sits with the mentor. And so sometimes they're not quite sure how to do that. They don't always have ideas on how to do that. And so the mentors coming together and having that ability to share those best practices really helps them to come up with those ideas on how do I have a diverse and challenging conversation that will expand our thought process and will extend our ability to learn and grow from each other. We do put a success scorecard around it, and what we're looking for is something that is both quantitative and qualitative, but the most impactful is also the storytelling aspect of it. So on the quantitative, you can see there's a level of success metrics that you can put in place, something as simple as 100% of participants complete the program. I would love to say that this is always 100%. It is not. We do have individuals who fall out of the program who don't really see the value of it. But I would say in general, about 90% of participants always complete the program. So it is a very high number. And then we ask a series of questions about, did they find it was valuable use of their time? Did they feel that they learned something new? And we use a 5-point scale so that the average score you can set to say, if we're doing our first session, we're hoping to at least get a 4 out of 5-point scale overall. Or you can, as your program progresses, you can look at a 4.5 or 4.25, with the understanding that you're looking at the overall score. The qualitative piece of it is getting some insights, because you do send a pre-program survey and a post-program survey, and understanding if these mentees have adopted one new inclusive behavior. Are they going to do something different? Are they going to do something as simple as change their speak-listen ratio? That simply means that rather than my engaging in conversation with someone and talking the majority of the time, I'm going to learn how to be quiet most of the time and take in what others are telling me as opposed to my speaking more than my listening. And that is a very inclusive behavior, and I see that quite a bit. That is something that people are adopting. And we also look to see how much the program starts to grow. Are people interested in running their own programs? Are people contacting us to say, I want to be part of this program, or I want my leaders to go through this program? So that's another qualitative measure that we use. And then the storytelling. We ask people, is there anything you want to share about your experience? Is there anything that you want to tell us that you think is important? And you also monitor from a distance how the participants that have gone through this program, how they are responding in the more broad world. Are you seeing them talking about the program? Are you seeing that their behaviors are changing? Are you seeing that they are telling everybody that they have a reverse mentor? And you do see that. You see some of these individuals who are up and they're talking about, I used to think X, Y, Z. I have a reverse mentor, and now I'm considering this. And it's very subtle, but they do start to talk about how this kind of experience has helped them to consider or reconsider things that they had not thought about before. And that is all part of measuring the success of your program. The greatest success is long-term. This is very important because most programs that we implement, we are looking for the success scorecard to say, we went through this program, we have a score of 4.25, bravo, we are successful, we did great. But the fact is, when you look at something like a reverse mentoring program, a program that is designed to challenge this diversity of thought, that's designed to challenge us to create a space of belonging, that does not happen overnight. That is something that you start to see over time. You start to see a number of these different behaviors shifting and attitudes changing and programs that are created all within this concept in mind because people were influenced, because they were inspired by a program such as reverse mentoring. So in order to implement this, I recommend that you start with socializing the program. It is important, if you're doing this within a company, to secure a program sponsor, somebody who's actually going to go through the program and be able to speak to the success and the value of this program. So try and get that program sponsor. Get some buy-off from cross-functional partners. You typically want to go across, maybe have other individuals that are going to be working with you to buy off on this. Sometimes people use their employee resource groups or their affinity groups. Sometimes people go across to other parts of the business that normally don't partner together. But look for that cross-collaboration partnership and run a proof of concept. Typically, I say 3 months. It's very quick, it's very intense, but it gives you a good idea of if people are going to benefit from this program, if people are going to advocate for this program, people are going to see value in this program. So it's 3 months, and rather than meeting once a month, you meet 2 times a month for 30 minutes as opposed to 1 hour. And just having 3 mentoring pairs, so 6 individuals, 3 mentoring pairs, is enough to give you an idea of the value of this program and if how you have planned to implement it could be successful. So once you run through your proof of concept, you evaluate it, you have your scorecard, your pre-program survey, your post-program survey, your scorecard, and then you provide that back to your program sponsor and your stakeholders to make a decision of do we move forward or not with this program. The investment that's required, there really is no budget required for this kind of program, and that's the nice part about it. When we are budget strapped, one thing that's very important to me as I design programs is to really think through what happens if tomorrow I don't have budget for this program, or I don't have budget today. Can I even do this? The nice thing about this program is there is no budget required. It is really more about your time commitment, socializing a program, running that proof of concept, getting your mentors and your mentees, bringing them together, training them. It is an investment of time. It is a commitment that you would need to make to it. But resource-wise, financial commitment, there is none. Not required, but highly recommended is that you do have that senior leader who is a sponsor and advocate for the program. If you decide to run a program and you don't have that senior leader and that sponsor in place yet, it's still okay, but at some point you should find somebody who's going to be a sponsor and advocate for the program and somebody who can manage it. You do need, especially up front, there's a lot of management up front as you pull it together, the time commitment you see here on the investment. Once the program is running for those 6 months, it's a little bit easier because you just meet once a month with the mentors. But tracking and managing and communicating the program is going to be very important. And then, if you decide that you're going to integrate this into your learning and development program, or you want to partner with the communications teams, you need somebody who can kind of bring that all together. So what's the value? This is great. No commitment financially, but what's the value? And for me, it's absolutely important to understand that when you think about innovation and creativity, there are some key concepts that go with that. In order to be innovative and creative, which is what we are all looking for, whether it's on a personal level, whether it's about our professional careers, whether it is about the workplace that we're in, when we think about innovation and creativity, there are these different aspects of it that are very critical for us to be successful. We need to be vulnerable. It is very relationship-based. We have to be inclusive. It's about being authentic. And let's not forget emotional. We think that being innovative and creative is not about being emotional. It is a very emotional journey when you go through innovation and creativity. And obviously, it expands our mindset. The uniqueness behind this is critical because if you are not thinking from a unique perspective, if you're not looking at how to solve a problem from a new and innovative perspective, you're not thinking about the uniqueness of your solution or the uniqueness of a particular situation, then you're not really pushing yourself beyond that comfort zone. Innovation, creativity is unpredictable, which is why we have to get comfortable with the fact that we have to be vulnerable, the fact that we will fall and fail and learn and move on. And for me, when I think about these concepts and how critical and essential they are to a business environment, to a personal and professional aspect of an individual, I think about reverse mentoring. Because everything around here, everything that describes innovation and creativity also describes reverse mentoring and what you can gain through this kind of relationship in reverse mentoring. Additional benefits that go with this is it does help people to engage and enhance and embrace their own cultures and the cultures of others. Sometimes we don't pause and recognize those aspects about ourselves because nobody's ever asked us the question. It's very similar where you're in a traditional mentoring relationship, and I've had people ask me, well, how did you, whatever it may be, how did you get into that profession? How did you do this? And it's not until I'm asked those questions that I start to really pause and think about, how did that happen? Why is that what it is? And this is the same thing that happens in reverse mentoring when we are asked those questions. It does lower the employee turnover and improves morale. And so it helps individuals to feel more comfortable. It creates that space for belonging. I am accepted for who I am. I am accepted for the differences in my thought and my perspectives and what it may be. It provides that visibility to high potential hidden gems. There are individuals based on their cultures, based on their personal characteristics, based on who they are, that tend to not to speak up or speak out or speak outside the crowd. And this is an opportunity to get to know those individuals a bit more. Fosters that inclusive leadership. And leaders who are vulnerable, leaders who think beyond their own perspectives, leaders who challenge themselves to ask those questions, why or why not? And it enables that brave space to practice vulnerability. We need to be vulnerable to be successful leaders. We need to be vulnerable to innovate and create. We need to get comfortable with vulnerability because the world around us is constantly changing. So I do challenge you today to be the disruptor that creates change. Don't just live it. This is your opportunity to take a program such as reverse mentoring, to push yourself to think beyond the normal day-to-day, to ask those hard questions of yourself and to have others ask you those hard questions, and for you to also have a safe and brave space where you can ask others some of those challenging questions where there is no other place to actually ask them. Thank you. And if there are any questions